On October 3, 2023, passengers aboard the InterCity Express 612 speeding from Berlin to Munich witnessed a silent commotion in Carriage 7. A man slumped forward in his seat, his phone buzzing endlessly beside a half-empty cup of coffee. At first, no one noticed. The rhythmic clatter of rails masked the faint thud of his body collapsing. The stewardess, moving briskly through the aisle, paused only when the train curved sharply, revealing a spreading pool of spilled espresso beneath his shoes. The man's passport identified him as Qasim Bakhsi, a 36-year-old Palestinian engineer. But to intelligence services across the Middle East, that name carried darker associations: drone warfare specialist, Hamas's silent innovator, and architect of aerial strikes that had shifted the Gaza battlefield. When the train stopped at Nuremberg Central Station, paramedics boarded quickly. They found no pulse, no sign of struggle. His laptop was encrypted, his phone wiped clean moments before death. The woman seated beside him recalled a faint mechanical click just seconds earlier. Within an hour, the Bundeskriminalamt, Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office, declared the scene suspicious. Surveillance footage showed two unidentified men disembarking one stop before Nuremberg, their faces blurred by scarves, their tickets purchased with Israeli-issued prepaid cards. As investigators reviewed the train's CCTV system, an unsettling detail emerged. Seconds before Bakhsi's death, the onboard Wi-Fi log showed an encrypted signal spike, an electronic handshake between devices. Someone had triggered something remotely, and the connection vanished instantly afterward. By nightfall, Israeli media outlets quietly removed articles referencing a technological breakthrough in drone counterintelligence. The timing was too sharp, too deliberate. Someone wanted the world to forget Qasim Bakhsi, to erase not only his presence, but also his purpose. His body, later transferred to Berlin's Charité hospital, bore no marks of poisoning or trauma. Toxicologists found only traces of a rare neuroinhibitor developed in the early 2000s for field assassinations, a compound known internally within Mossad as Narium-9. Authorities hesitated to announce the cause. The German government feared diplomatic fallout, yet within intelligence circles whispers spread. Mossad had struck again, not in Gaza or Beirut, but in the heart of Europe, aboard a moving train filled with civilians. The news, when it leaked, set off a storm. How did a drone pilot become a hunted man? Why risk an international scandal for a single engineer? And how did Israel's most secretive operatives track, locate, and eliminate him with surgical precision? The death of Qasim Bakhsi was not merely another covert killing. It sent tremors through defense ministries from Tel Aviv to Ankara. Intelligence analysts understood immediately that the man's disappearance meant more than personal revenge. It was a calculated message from the unseen corridors of power. For months before his death, Western satellites had recorded experimental drone flights over Gaza exhibiting flight patterns previously unseen in Hamas's arsenal. They hovered longer, maneuvered faster, and struck with unsettling accuracy. Someone had redefined asymmetric warfare. That someone, according to intercepted chatter, was Bakhsi. He was more than a pilot. He was the mind behind autonomous targeting systems that learned from every strike. His work threatened to neutralize Israel's decades-long technological advantage. For a state built on preemptive defense, that was unacceptable. His survival represented risk, his elimination, necessity. In the quiet rooms of defense ministries, men in suits debated consequences. Could Germany become a battleground for Middle Eastern vendettas? Could Israel's pursuit of security justify operations on European soil? Every government watching knew the truth. Espionage had no borders anymore. By dawn, international journalists circled Berlin's Hauptbahnhof, while Mossad's denials echoed with suspicious precision. No Israeli involvement, officials claimed. But the silence behind those words spoke louder. The world had entered a new theater, one where assassinations were no longer committed in shadows, but in motion, across borders, in plain sight. Who truly ordered the death of Qasim Bakhsi? Was it an act sanctioned by the highest echelons of Israeli intelligence, or the handiwork of a rogue cell acting beyond oversight? What secret did he carry that justified execution aboard a civilian train? Was it technology? A breakthrough capable of turning the tide of aerial warfare? Or was it information? the kind that could expose covert networks operating across Europe. Did Mossad fear his knowledge, or his alliances with rival powers quietly funding his research? How had they tracked him so precisely, across borders, languages, and false identities? Did someone close to him betray his movements, or was every digital trace of his life already mapped by Israeli cyber units long before his final journey began? And above all, why now? Why strike when diplomatic negotiations between Israel and Western allies sought restraint? Why risk global outrage to silence one engineer? Perhaps because in the logic of clandestine wars, certain minds are more dangerous than armies, and certain deaths more valuable than peace. Qasim Bakhsi was born on June 14, 1987, in the crowded lanes of Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. His childhood unfolded amid blockades, air raid sirens, and ration lines. Electricity came in intervals, but his fascination with light never dimmed. Even as a boy, he dismantled radios, built crude transmitters from scavenged parts, and scribbled antenna diagrams on the back of school notebooks. His father, Mahmoud Bakhsi, worked as a mechanic for local fishing boats, while his mother, Nawal, taught elementary mathematics. Together they nurtured a household of quiet resilience. Theirs was not a family of militants but of survivalists, people who found dignity in routine under occupation. Yet Qasim's eyes were always elsewhere, drawn toward the skies where Israeli drones hummed endlessly. At 14, he witnessed his cousin's death during an airstrike. That day altered something fundamental within him. He stopped speaking for weeks, then re-emerged with a sharpened curiosity. He began salvaging fragments of drone wreckage from bomb sites, studying circuitry, noting frequency patterns, identifying thermal sensors. His obsession became methodical, almost devotional, as if deciphering the enemy's machines could decode the logic of war itself. By his late teens, his intellect had drawn notice. A scholarship from a local engineering institute took him to Cairo, where he encountered an entirely different world. Internet cafes buzzing with open-source software and electronic forums trading in defense algorithms. It was there that he first understood the reach of technology beyond borders and the power of code as a weapon disguised as invention. In Cairo, his teachers described him as withdrawn but brilliant, fluent in mathematics and uneasy in crowds. He graduated with honors in mechatronics engineering. His thesis focused on autonomous aerial stability in restricted GPS environments. Years later, intelligence archives would identify that thesis as the foundation of Hamas's later drone guidance systems. When he returned to Gaza in 2010, the border guards found notebooks filled with calculations, not ideology. Yet within those formulas lay the seed of his future. The young engineer who sought to understand machines was stepping into a region where understanding could become a weapon, and curiosity could mark a man for death. Qasim Bakhsi never saw himself as a soldier. He described himself in rare interviews as an engineer of necessity. His ideology was not born from slogans, but from the mathematics of imbalance, one side with satellites, the other with stones. His conviction grew not from hatred, but from calculation. Technology could level power where politics had failed. He avoided mosques except for Friday prayers, preferring the solitude of laboratories and rooftops. His friends recalled how he would spend nights watching the sky, tracking drone movements by ear. He could identify models by their hum: Hermes, Heron, Reaper, each pitch a signature of surveillance. He said understanding them was the only way to feel safe. He had strange habits. He disliked digital photographs, covered laptop cameras with tape, and spoke in short-coded phrases when discussing work. He collected broken watch parts, believing timepieces were metaphors for human control. Intricate, fragile, and always ticking toward failure. He drank endless coffee, never sugar, and wrote every formula twice, once in Arabic, once in English. Despite his secretive nature, Qasim was not without warmth. His students at the Islamic University of Gaza remembered his patience. He told them that machines did not hate or love, only people did. Yet in his quiet discipline, he was constructing instruments that would one day redefine that boundary between machine precision and human vengeance. Within Gaza's militant circles, Qasim Bakhsi earned the codename Al-Tayr, meaning the bird. It was a name whispered half in respect, half in awe, for his creations seemed to fly with minds of their own. Engineers under him joked that his drones listened to their maker. To Israeli analysts, he became the ghost pilot, an invisible adversary whose machines struck without warning and vanished into the clouds before radar could trace them. Despite the myth surrounding him, Bakhsi viewed himself as a craftsman, not a warrior. He often said, "Every invention begins with fear." He saw drones not as tools of destruction, but as shields, extensions of a people denied protection. His colleagues said he never celebrated strikes, never watched aftermath videos, and refused propaganda footage. To him, effectiveness was measured not in death counts, but in deterrence. Yet he was aware of his growing legend. He once confided to a friend that myths were dangerous. They made men careless and governments paranoid. In the reflection of every drone lens, he saw his own end approaching, inevitable, mechanical, and precise, like one of his own designs. The transition from academic to operative was gradual, almost imperceptible. In 2011, while Gaza reeled from economic blockade, Qasim Bakhsi began consulting for civil engineering projects tied to Hamas's administrative wing. His task was to design surveillance balloons for crowd monitoring and border observation, humanitarian, at least on paper. Yet within months, those same designs appeared in modified military prototypes. His quiet competence drew the attention of Hamas's Internal Security Bureau. Officials approached him with offers of resources, laboratories, and protection. At first he refused, insisting his work remained defensive. But when Israeli airstrikes destroyed his university lab in 2012, killing 2 of his students, his restraint fractured. The war had entered his life, and he began to fight it with equations instead of guns. By 2013, Bakhsi was fully embedded within Hamas's technical development division. Under code names and layers of secrecy, he began designing flight control systems resistant to Israeli jamming. His workshop moved constantly, from basements to tunnels to abandoned schools, always under threat of surveillance. Each relocation deepened his paranoia, but also honed his precision. He spoke rarely in meetings, preferring to let his results speak. Those results soon turned Hamas's improvised drones into semi-autonomous weapons capable of navigating GPS denial zones. To allies, he was the future of Palestinian resistance. To Israel, he had crossed the line separating engineer from combatant. The man who once studied flight for wonder had become a ghost haunting the skies he once admired. Qasim Bakhsi's first recorded confrontation with the law came in late 2014, after an Israeli drone strike near Rafah destroyed a convoy believed to be transporting his prototypes. In the aftermath, Egyptian border security detained him while crossing from Sinai with unregistered electronic components. The charges were vague: illegal possession of military-grade transmitters, but the intent was clear. Cairo had begun cooperating with Tel Aviv's intelligence dossiers, and Bakhsi was now a name worth monitoring. He was held for 72 days in an underground detention facility near El Arish. Officially, he was questioned about smuggling. Unofficially, his interrogators wanted design blueprints, encryption codes, and supplier networks. He gave them nothing. The Egyptians, unwilling to risk diplomatic tension with Gaza's leadership, released him quietly, stripped of documents but unbroken in will. Upon returning to Gaza, he found his workshop raided and his family questioned. Local media briefly reported his disappearance, but within weeks, the story vanished. Israeli cyber units, intercepting Hamas communications, noted a single phrase repeated among operatives: "The bird has returned to the nest." His reappearance was seen as symbolic defiance, and his legend within Hamas began to take form. This period marked his first step into operational secrecy. He abandoned public life, burned old identification records, and communicated solely through encrypted radio bursts. His neighbors saw him less. His mother received fewer calls, and by 2015, the man once known as an engineer had become a cipher, invisible, precise, and already preparing for the technological war that would define his legacy. During his 72 days in Egyptian custody, rumors of torture circulated through Gaza's underground networks. Fellow detainees later described his cell, a windowless chamber lit by a single flickering bulb, its walls echoing with the hum of distant generators. He was subjected to psychological strain rather than physical abuse: sleep deprivation, recorded screams, fabricated executions staged outside his door. Interrogators demanded the names of collaborators, suppliers, and financiers. They pressed him for encryption keys used in Hamas's drone communication grids. He refused, communicating only through silence and brief coded phrases. His resistance elevated him from mere engineer to symbol, a man who endured the machinery of interrogation without surrendering blueprints or loyalties. When finally released, he emerged gaunt, his hands trembling, his speech slow. Yet those who saw him said his eyes were different, cold, unblinking, calculating. He began keeping small notebooks filled with fragmented equations and Arabic poetry, alternating between logic and lament. From that confinement, his ideology hardened. Pain, he later wrote in an encrypted message, was the final calibration of conviction. The man who once built machines for defense now believed survival required offense. Upon his release, Qasim Bakhsi was approached by a shadowy offshoot within Hamas's military wing known as the Unit of Technological Resistance, or Al-Muqawama al-Taqniya. It was a clandestine branch tasked with creating weapons of precision rather than volume, silent, surgical, and deniable. The invitation came through encrypted channels, bearing no signature, only coordinates to a basement beneath a ruined textile factory in Gaza City. Inside, Bakhsi found an assembly of engineers, coders, and former university students. Their mission was simple yet revolutionary: transform Gaza's limited resources into strategic innovation. Under Bakhsi's guidance, the group developed compact surveillance drones made from repurposed consumer parts. Their first successful test flight, in early 2016, reached the Israeli border undetected, a small victory that changed everything. He became both mentor and architect. He structured the cell into tight operational units, each isolated by design to prevent infiltration. His approach mirrored the modularity of machines, efficient, self-contained, and expendable. Soon, their creations evolved. Armed drones capable of carrying explosives, equipped with night vision cameras, and guided by autonomous algorithms rather than human pilots. By 2017, Israeli defense analysts classified the unit as an emerging asymmetric threat. For Hamas, Bakhsi's work promised strategic parity. For Mossad, it crossed the threshold from experimentation to active warfare. Intelligence reports from Tel Aviv began using a chilling phrase to describe him: the engineer who made shadows fly. From that moment forward, Qasim Bakhsi ceased being an asset of resistance and became a marked man, an innovator whose brilliance had outgrown the boundaries of his own survival. Between 2017 and 2019, Qasim Bakhsi's operations expanded beyond Gaza's borders. His unit established covert supply routes through Sinai and southern Lebanon, trafficking in lithium batteries, gyroscopic sensors, and encrypted communication boards. Each shipment passed through multiple intermediaries, disguised as agricultural equipment or medical devices. The network was vast, invisible, and meticulously engineered, a logistical symphony directed by an unseen hand. As his influence grew, rival factions within Hamas and Islamic Jihad competed for his allegiance. Some sought to weaponize his drones for targeted assassinations, others for smuggling contraband. Bakhsi resisted both extremes, maintaining that his designs were meant to see without being seen. But control in Gaza was fragile, and his invention soon slipped into darker hands. Within months, Israeli informants were kidnapped under drones he had once calibrated, their abductions filmed from above, cold, mechanical, efficient. In retaliation, Israel intensified its surveillance campaign. Mossad tracked component trails, seized couriers, and intercepted coded transmissions. But Bakhsi adapted faster. He began moving between safe houses every 48 hours, using modified drones to scout for heat signatures and intercept foreign signals. He had turned technology into both shield and sword. By late 2019, 3 targeted killings of Israeli collaborators in Rafah bore hallmarks of his software: timing sequences, camera oscillations, coded signatures embedded in the videos themselves. The message was unmistakable. Bakhsi's machines now acted as instruments of selective retribution. His fingerprints were digital, but unmistakably human. He had crossed from inventor to executioner, blurring the final line between intelligence and murder. On February 8, 2020, Israeli reconnaissance detected an unfamiliar drone pattern over Kerem Shalom. The craft was small, black, and silent, flying below radar threshold. When anti-air defenses engaged, it detonated mid-air, scattering hundreds of metallic shards laced with surveillance microchips. It was not an attack, but a message. We are watching you watch us. Analysts later traced its programming style directly to Bakhsi's algorithmic signature. In May 2020, a smuggler named Farid al-Hamdi was intercepted at the Rafah crossing with disassembled drone parts hidden inside generator casings. Under interrogation, he confessed that the cargo was bound for The Engineer, whose current base lay beneath an abandoned olive press near Khan Yunis. 2 days later, the site was struck by precision missiles. The laboratory was destroyed, but no body was recovered. Surveillance drones recorded a lone figure escaping on a motorbike through the dunes, presumed to be Bakhsi. By October 2021, his name had surfaced in intelligence briefings across Europe. Interpol flagged shipments from Eastern Europe containing specialized gyroscopes consistent with his designs. One shipment, traced to Hamburg, vanished en route to Gaza. German customs reported no record of seizure. Mossad's Berlin desk quietly noted the anomaly. On March 14, 2022, a coordinated drone strike near the Erez crossing killed 2 Israeli technicians. Forensic analysis revealed software codes identical to those found in the Kerem Shalom incident. A pattern had emerged: precision timing, adaptive algorithms, and the unmistakable imprint of Bakhsi's engineering mind. Each attack tightened the net around him. Each success brought him closer to exposure. And somewhere, in Tel Aviv's intelligence directorate, his file thickened, marked in red ink with a single Hebrew word: elimination. By early 2022, Qasim Bakhsi's name appeared across multiple intelligence databases under varying aliases: Q Bashir, Khalid al-Farouk, and the aviary technician. Each entry carried the same classification: high threat, priority elimination. Israel's Shin Bet listed him among the top 5 individuals posing technological risk to national security. His innovations had evolved beyond tactical nuisance. They now represented strategic disruption. Washington's Defense Intelligence Agency issued parallel alerts, warning NATO partners that drone algorithms originating from Gaza were being exported through clandestine European servers. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom traced at least 7 encrypted transmissions back to research facilities believed to be linked to Bakhsi's networks. The European Union quietly circulated his image among security agencies, marking him a digital ghost moving across their jurisdiction. Within Gaza, his influence grew mythic. Children drew pictures of drones and called them Bakhsi birds. His name became a symbol of defiance against air superiority. Yet, beyond the propaganda, Hamas officials were increasingly uneasy. A man so indispensable was also a liability. His death, they feared, would bring retribution of biblical scale. Still, they protected him, relocating him constantly through tunnels and safe houses that only a handful knew. In Tel Aviv, Mossad's Keshet division, specializing in technical operations, compiled a dossier titled Operation Whispering Sky. It mapped his last known movements, academic contacts, and procurement routes. Every pattern pointed westward. Bakhsi had moved to Europe under false papers, possibly seeking sanctuary or new technology sources. His trail led through Cyprus, Italy, and eventually Germany. By mid-2023, his profile was elevated to Priority 1, authorizing direct action. The mission parameters were classified, but the objective was unmistakable: find Qasim Bakhsi and erase him before his machines could change the balance of the Middle East. In 2017 onward, attempts to eliminate Bakhsi multiplied across continents. In June 2018, a suspected car bombing near Rafah failed to detonate properly, exposing a network of couriers and speculation. Responsibility remained officially unclaimed, intensifying the paranoia around his movements. In March 2019, an attempt at poisoning failed when medical staff in Cairo detected unknown metabolites in his bloodstream during a routine check. Bakhsi survived, and withdrew deeper into clandestinity, changing safe houses and relying on couriers more than channels. Satellite leaks in 2020 revealed attempted airstrikes on suspected laboratories linked to his cell. One strike near Khan Yunis damaged production lines but missed personnel. The pattern of near misses suggested intelligence with gaps, and operatives adapted with evasive tradecraft. In London 2021, an apparent surveillance operation aimed to intercept his contacts. A courier was apprehended carrying encrypted drives. He refused interrogation, offering nothing. British authorities released him under legal constraints, fueling frustration among agencies and prompting covert unilateral plans. Anonymous messages arrived in Gaza describing attempted cyber intrusions aimed at corrupting his codebase. Analysts believed foreign hackers sought to implant false telemetry, inducing navigational failure. Bakhsi countered by compartmentalizing modules and introducing manual overrides and redundancy over reliance. In early 2022, an explosion near a safe house in Cyprus killed 2 associates. Intelligence linked the attack to a private security firm operating through shell companies. Corporate deniability became a tactic in the shadow war that hunted him abroad. By summer 2022, assassination cells rehearsed operations in abandoned train yards. Intelligence photographs showed operatives wearing clothes and lugging suitcases. The imagery suggested a willingness to blend into civilian flows, raising moral and legal questions about operations in public spaces. Internal Mossad cables later leaked, described several failed attempts to recruit insiders close to Bakhsi. Some prospects were turned by promises, others by threats. Each failure increased urgency, pushing planners toward riskier tactics and covert operations inside Allied jurisdictions abroad. In November 2022, an explosive device hidden inside a shipment to a Hamburg warehouse was intercepted by German police after a tip. The seizure signaled cooperation, but it also revealed how covert logistics had become intertwined with commerce throughout Europe. Each foiled assassination hardened resolve on both sides. For Bakhsi, survival meant reinvention. For his hunters, escalation and erosion of legal boundaries. The cycle of attempt, adaptation, retaliation culminated aboard a train carriage where movement concealed intent and reduced accountability. By late 2022, Qasim Bakhsi had become a man living in fragments. Every passport was temporary, every city a disguise. His reflection in passing windows looked older, thinner, almost spectral. He traveled under aliases, using cash only, erasing his digital presence each night before sleep. Yet he understood the futility of his own precautions. In his encrypted diary, recovered months later, he wrote a single line repeated 3 times. "They are already here." Intelligence chatter across Europe grew urgent. Mossad's signals division reported a confirmed sighting on a regional flight from Milan to Frankfurt. A man matching his gait, his silence, his nervous ritual of touching the inside pocket of his coat every few minutes. Surveillance teams converged. The endgame was unfolding. Friends urged him to flee to South America, but he refused. He believed his work, once complete, would guarantee parity, that Israel would think twice before striking again. It was a miscalculation born of intellect, not arrogance. The decision to remain sealed his fate. He had spent a lifetime teaching machines to adapt faster than men. Now, somewhere in a silent command center, men were adapting faster than his machines. The story of Qasim Bakhsi unfolded within the longest shadow of the modern Middle East. The unending struggle between Israel and Hamas, a conflict not only of land, but of ideology, technology, and memory. For decades, control of the skies had defined power in the region. Israel's drones hovered as constant sentinels, their presence an invisible reminder of dominance. Yet by the late 2010s, that monopoly began to erode. Hamas's shift toward technological warfare marked a new phase. No longer relying solely on tunnels and mortars, the group sought innovation as its shield. Iranian funding, Lebanese intermediaries, and black market engineers converged to create networks of knowledge that transcended borders. Gaza's besieged workshops became laboratories for asymmetric ingenuity. In Israel, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Every advancement from Gaza was perceived not merely as resistance, but as evolution, an existential threat to deterrence. The balance that had preserved relative stability was tilting toward uncertainty. For intelligence agencies, engineers like Bakhsi represented the mutation of conflict, wars no longer fought by armies, but by algorithms and code. Meanwhile, Europe's quiet involvement deepened. Smuggling routes through the Balkans supplied microprocessors and fiber components. Governments turned a blind eye, unwilling to disrupt trade or expose covert deals. Germany, already burdened with historical guilt toward both Jews and Palestinians, became an unwitting crossroads, a neutral ground where espionage disguised itself as commerce. Thus, when Bakhsi boarded that German train in 2023, he carried not only his secrets, but decades of geopolitical tension compressed into one moving capsule of steel. His death would not merely silence a man, it would echo across alliances, defense treaties, and moral boundaries. It was the inevitable consequence of a conflict that had long outgrown its borders. Every nation with a stake in the Middle East had a shadow in Qasim Bakhsi's story. For Israel, he represented a clear and present danger, a technician whose intellect threatened to democratize aerial warfare. His elimination was not vengeance but policy, an extension of the long-standing doctrine of preemption. Strike first, and history will justify the means. Within the halls of Mossad, his name circulated as a problem of time, not morality. For Hamas, Bakhsi was both an asset and an embarrassment. His genius had strengthened their image, but had also invited retaliation that Gaza could ill afford. Internal documents later revealed conflicting directives, some urging his protection, others suggesting quiet exile to diffuse Israeli attention. Yet Bakhsi refused to leave, insisting that innovation under siege was itself resistance. His stubbornness became both inspiration and liability. Iran viewed him as a strategic opportunity. Tehran's Revolutionary Guard offered him sanctuary and research funding, hoping to integrate his algorithms into their drone fleet. Negotiations took place through intermediaries in Beirut, but Bakhsi declined. He distrusted Iranian politics as much as Israeli espionage. "Every patron demands obedience," he once wrote. "I prefer solitude to servitude." Germany found itself in an uncomfortable position. Hosting both Israeli liaisons and Palestinian diaspora networks, Berlin was a silent stage for espionage. Intelligence cooperation with Israel ensured awareness of Mossad operations, but not always consent. When news of Bakhsi's death emerged, German officials expressed formal outrage, yet internal memos revealed muted relief. The man had become a diplomatic hazard no state wished to claim. Across capitals, Washington, Ankara, London, reactions were identical: measured condemnation, private approval. The unspoken consensus was clear. In the age of unmanned warfare, assassinations were becoming maintenance acts of global security. Qasim Bakhsi's death, though public, served interests too numerous to protest. Qasim Bakhsi mattered because he embodied the convergence of intellect and insurgency. He represented a new kind of adversary, not a commander shouting orders in the field, but an engineer rewriting the physics of power from behind a computer screen. His mind transformed Gaza's resistance from improvisation to precision, from desperation to design. In every sense, he was the architect of a paradigm shift. The idea that small nations, armed with code and conviction, could challenge states that once ruled the air unopposed. To Israel, he was the nightmare of a decentralized future. His creations required no armies, no borders, and no central command. They could be reproduced in hidden workshops and flown by anonymous operators. This terrified strategists who had built entire doctrines on technological superiority. If one man in Gaza could outthink their engineers, then no frontier was truly secure. For the Palestinian cause, Bakhsi's work carried symbolic weight. He offered proof that intellect could become resistance, that even within occupation, invention could be a weapon. His drones were more than machines. They were metaphors for freedom, small fragments of control reclaimed from the sky that had long belonged to others. On the global stage, he blurred moral boundaries. Nations that once condemned terrorism began quietly studying his methods. Defense companies referenced his algorithms in secret tenders. Cybersecurity experts cited his encryption patterns as case studies in resilience. In death, he became what all covert figures eventually become: a ghost whose legacy shaped policies, budgets, and fears. His assassination aboard that German train was not merely the end of a man, but the suppression of an idea. That genius could emerge from rubble, that intelligence could threaten empires. And in silencing him, the world confirmed his importance. In late September 2023, 3 passengers arrived separately at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport under ordinary circumstances that concealed extraordinary purpose. They carried no weapons, only luggage containing modified electronics, falsified travel itineraries, and credentials linking them to non-existent corporations. Their names on record, David Ben Harel, Rafi Cohen, and Elena Weiss, belonged to ghosts fabricated within Israel's Interior Ministry months earlier. Surveillance later revealed that all 3 boarded different inbound flights, one from Zurich, one from Prague, one from Istanbul. They arrived within a span of 8 hours, yet made no visible contact at the terminal. Instead, they checked into distinct hotels across Berlin, one near Alexanderplatz, another beside Tiergarten, the third in quiet Moabit. Each hotel had been chosen for proximity to transportation lines and exit routes toward southern Germany. Mossad's logistics unit, known internally as Caesarea Division, had orchestrated their cover identities with surgical precision. Passports bore subtle imperfections, deliberate smudges and mismatched ink tones, to mimic human error, avoiding suspicion from digital scanners. Their devices contained dual operating systems, civilian facades masking encrypted command modules accessible only through voice-activated phrases in Hebrew. On paper, they were business consultants attending a renewable energy conference. In reality, they were Kidanim, assassins trained for surgical elimination. Their mission briefing, transmitted through a self-deleting file, contained 3 words: target confirmed, train transit. Over the next 72 hours, they would move through Germany like static in the wind, invisible, coordinated, bound by silence. The hunt for Qasim Bakhsi had reached Europe, and the stage for the final act was already set in motion. Each operative settled into Berlin with the unremarkable grace of seasoned travelers. David Ben Harel checked into the Park Inn overlooking Alexanderplatz, requesting a high floor with an eastern view, perfect for line-of-sight transmissions. Elena Weiss occupied a small pension in Moabit, where an innocuous flower shop across the street hid a passive receiver disguised as an air quality monitor. Rafi Cohen, posing as an energy sector consultant, registered at a business hotel near Potsdamer Platz under a French passport, paying in cash. For 48 hours, their only visible activity was tourism. They visited cafes, took photographs of landmarks, and swiped transit cards that would later help German investigators trace their movements. Behind those routines ran constant calibration, encrypted communications through low-bandwidth bursts, coded as Bluetooth pairing signals. From their rooms, they mapped Wi-Fi signatures across central Berlin, searching for one particular pattern: Bakhsi's encrypted fingerprint, the same network signature his laptop emitted whenever it booted. On the 3rd evening, the trace appeared at Berlin Hauptbahnhof. Bakhsi had arrived, ticket purchased under the alias Sami Khaled, destination Munich. Surveillance drones, no larger than insects, followed him from a distance of 50 meters, transmitting visual feed to an unmarked van parked near Invalidenstrasse. Through concealed lenses, they observed him sit alone, headphones in, expression unreadable. He appeared thinner than expected, almost fragile. Yet inside that frail frame rested years of knowledge, formulas, and systems worth entire arsenals. The operatives waited for authorization from Tel Aviv's command server. At 22:17, a single code sequence arrived: proceed with containment. From that moment, Bakhsi's journey south became a moving target within German jurisdiction. The net was closing, 1 quiet kilometer at a time. October 3, 2023, began like any other day on the European rail grid: mist along the Spree, commuters hurrying through glass terminals, the routine rhythm of travel masking the choreography of a hunt. At precisely 06:42 a.m., Qasim Bakhsi boarded the InterCity Express 612 bound for Munich. He carried a single leather briefcase, a thermos of coffee, and a folded newspaper whose crossword he never began. At 06:39, 3 minutes before departure, Elena Weiss entered the same train through Carriage 5, dragging a gray suitcase containing a concealed signal repeater, disguised as a portable router. Rafi Cohen positioned himself in Carriage 8, 2 compartments behind Bakhsi's seat in Carriage 7. David Ben Harel remained on the platform, appearing to take photographs of the station facade. His camera lens, in fact, transmitted live telemetry to the van outside. As the train accelerated south, the operatives activated passive surveillance. A tiny node within Weiss's luggage began emitting an artificial Wi-Fi signal identical to Bakhsi's encrypted network profile, prompting his laptop to handshake automatically. Once the connection was established, a remote payload was injected, a data erasure sequence bundled with a neurostimulant trigger device hidden inside a modified pen he always carried. At 0804 near Leipzig, Cohen walked past Bakhsi's compartment, pretending to adjust his jacket. A magnetic transceiver beneath his cuff synchronized the pen's microchip. The process took 6 seconds. No one noticed. Outside, rain streaked the windows, and passengers dozed to the hum of the rails. At 0912, a faint vibration passed through Bakhsi's hand. He straightened, blinked, and collapsed forward, as if succumbing to fatigue. The neuro compound activated instantly, shutting down synaptic response within moments. Weiss retrieved her suitcase. Cohen disembarked at the next stop. Ben Harel deleted all data caches from his camera before leaving the station. The entire operation lasted 2 hours and 35 minutes. No gunfire, no trace, only silence, the perfect geometry of an invisible kill conducted amid morning commuters. Mossad operatives favored a palette of tools blending tradecraft and emerging science. Magnetic transceivers, custom signal repeaters, inertial micro-injectors, and voice-activated kill switches masked as mundane devices carried aboard trains by casual travelers to avoid detection by automated scanners daily. The neuroinhibitor used in the operation was a minuscule compound delivery system, encapsulated within a micro-electromechanical implant, activated by a specific RF handshake and designed to degrade rapidly to avoid forensic detection in standard toxicology assays within 72 hours. Encryption and mimicry were central. Devices emitted synthetic Wi-Fi signatures cloned from the target's habitual networks, coaxing automatic connections that bypassed passwords and triggered payloads only when biometric or motion thresholds matched pre-programmed patterns recorded during surveillance in previous rehearsals. For physical concealment, operatives used everyday objects: a fountain pen housing a micro-injector, a watch case concealing a chemical capsule, a shoe sole hiding a GPS jammer. Each prop underwent forensic stripping to remove fingerprints and DNA traces before deployment. Communications relied on layered anonymity: disposable satellite phones for long range, short-burst UHF beacons for local sync, and dead-drop servers in 2 neutral countries routing commands through multiple proxies to frustrate traceback efforts by European authorities and complicate diplomatic responses. Tradecraft extended to the mundane. Operatives booked adjacent seats, rehearsed passenger behavior, and timed restroom visits to create blind spots. They leveraged platform schedules, synchronized watches, and civilian routines to manufacture plausible deniability within crowded public spaces without leaving operational residue. Intelligence support included biometric databases and commercial satellite tasking. Analysts matched gate signatures, purchase records, and sewage patterns to predict routines. Open-source imagery combined with human intel produced a temporal map, narrowing windows when an intervention would minimize collateral exposure. Forensics planners prepared cover narratives: natural collapse, medical emergency, or accidental poisoning. Their scripts aimed to steer initial inquiries away from state actors toward isolated incidents, buying crucial hours for extraction teams to cross borders and diplomatic deniability to ossify. The carriage lights hummed like a restrained orchestra, each bulb marking seconds toward inevitability. Operatives rehearsed their roles with surgical calm, sampling crowds, adjusting scarves, and practicing smiles. The mundane became camouflage. Every ordinary gesture concealed an extraordinary intent today. A child spilled juice 2 rows ahead, triggering a cascade of small distractions. A commuter dropped his newspaper, and a woman stood to retrieve a fallen stroller. Each interruption was catalogued by eyes behind lenses, tolerated and timed to perfection. Rain-blurred glass, transforming reflections into anonymous specters. The conductor's steps echoed, measured, irrelevant to strangers. Smoke from a platform kiosk curled inside briefly, a phantom used to mask scent and sound, a detail later crucial in witness recollection forever. A near miss occurred when a trolley rolled past, grazing a boot, setting off a startled shout. A child laughed, fell silent. One operative's throat tightened, another's hand twitched near a zip. Time compressed into decision, breath held between trains. When the collapse occurred, 100 lives rearranged unknowingly. Phones recorded fragments, strangers formed circles of care, and the operatives slipped into exits. A single photograph captured a blurred figure leaning, coffee spilled, the image that would haunt investigations. At 09:12 a.m., between Nuremberg and Ingolstadt, Qasim Bakhsi's body betrayed him. Witnesses described a subtle shudder, a tightening of his jaw, then stillness, as if a switch had been flipped inside his mind. The pen in his hand clattered softly onto the tray table, its silver clip catching the sunlight for a moment before rolling toward the aisle. He did not gasp or convulse. His breathing slowed, then ceased entirely, leaving the faintest tremor on his lips. A passenger 2 seats away assumed he had fallen asleep. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels continued, unbroken, indifferent. His coffee cooled untouched, his phone screen dimmed, the Wi-Fi signal still pulsed. By the time the conductor reached him near the next station, his pulse had vanished. The operatives had already dispersed, one exiting in Bamberg, another boarding a taxi toward Munich, the third flying out of Zurich that evening. The neurotoxin degraded with precision, leaving nothing but ordinary cardiac failure. Medical examiners later called it death by natural causes. Yet those who understood the craft saw the truth. It was not poison or bullet that killed him, but the mathematics of inevitability, calculated, rehearsed, and executed without error. The discovery occurred quietly, without alarm. At 09:28 a.m., the train stewardess attempted to collect empty cups from Carriage 7. She found Bakhsi motionless, head bowed, eyes half open as though still studying the crossword before him. She called his name twice, then touched his shoulder. The body was cool. Passengers nearby froze, instinctively lowering their voices, uncertain whether they were witnessing sleep or death. Emergency procedures were announced, the carriage sealed, and the train diverted toward Nuremberg Central Station. Paramedics boarded within minutes, rolling their defibrillator cart through the narrow aisle. They tried twice, electric jolts rippling through a lifeless frame, then stopped. One medic whispered, "No trauma, no residue." Another noted a faint chemical scent, metallic and sweet. Police secured his briefcase, laptop, and phone. All were clean, data wiped seconds before the train entered station range. A single fingerprint on the pen matched his own. Surveillance from preceding stations showed him boarding alone. Witnesses remembered little, only a quiet man who smiled politely and declined conversation. When the announcement finally reached Berlin, German authorities suspected heart failure. But within intelligence channels, another phrase began circulating: Operation complete. The echo of precision hummed beneath bureaucratic calm. The autopsy was performed that evening at Berlin's Charité Hospital under heightened security. Doctors noted an absence of bruising, needle marks, or contusions. His heart displayed no sign of structural weakness. Lungs were clear, pupils reactive to light even post-mortem. An anomaly suggesting neural inhibition before cardiac arrest. Toxicologists initially found nothing. Standard assays returned negative for known poisons, opiates, or neurotoxins. 48 hours later, deeper chromatographic analysis revealed microscopic residues of an unstable compound bound to hemoglobin chains. The chemical, later classified, degraded upon exposure to air, leaving only a faint trace. Molecular fragments consistent with synthetic derivatives of nerium oleander, a compound long rumored to feature in experimental Mossad toxins. Investigators puzzled over the mechanism. A death triggered remotely, timed perfectly with digital erasure across all his devices. It was the sort of operation that erased not only its target, but its own forensic trail. The coroner recorded cause of death as acute cardiac paralysis of indeterminate origin. Unofficially, German intelligence circulated a single-page memorandum titled Project Nerium. Its margin bore a handwritten note from an unidentified analyst. The toxin is not the mystery, the method is. Beneath it, a single word in red ink: Mossad. Within days, German investigators began retracing the movements of every passenger on the InterCity Express 612. Closed-circuit footage from Berlin Hauptbahnhof revealed three figures of interest: a woman with a gray suitcase, a man with a camera, and another adjusting his jacket near Bakhsi's compartment. Their faces were clear but unfamiliar to every European database. Facial recognition flagged anomalies, subtle mismatches suggesting biometric masking, a technique known among intelligence circles as morphological layering. Interpol cross-checked travel records. All three had entered Germany using legitimate passports from France, Switzerland, and Austria. Yet the serial numbers corresponded to documents previously reported lost. Within a week, diplomatic channels ignited. Paris denied involvement. Vienna claimed forgery. Bern issued quiet outrage. The scandal echoed the 2010 Dubai assassination, reviving memories of Mossad's previous misuse of European identities. In Berlin, investigators discovered that one suspect's hotel reservation had been paid through an Israeli fintech firm registered under a shell company in Luxembourg. The connection was undeniable, yet politically radioactive. German authorities convened emergency consultations with Tel Aviv, demanding explanation. Israel responded with silence. No acknowledgement, no denial, only a terse diplomatic statement. The State of Israel conducts no operations on German soil. Behind closed doors, analysts knew otherwise. A declassified fragment from Bundesnachrichtendienst (BND) logs noted a data spike. Encrypted traffic routed through Tel Aviv's defense servers precisely during the train's journey. It was enough to confirm coordination, not enough to prove culpability. When the press obtained leaked images of the operatives' faces, the public outcry was immediate. Headlines screamed, "Israeli agents in Germany?" Yet within 48 hours, the story vanished from major networks. Servers hosting the footage went offline. Journalists received polite legal threats, and the scandal, like the man who caused it, disappeared into managed silence. The diplomatic storm broke quietly, in coded exchanges and midnight phone calls. Germany summoned the Israeli ambassador for a private meeting at the chancellery. No press attended, no transcript survived, only whispers of restrained fury. Berlin demanded accountability for a breach of sovereignty. Tel Aviv offered condolences for an unfortunate death during transit. Behind the euphemisms lay an open secret. Both sides knew the truth. Across Europe, foreign ministries debated response. France condemned the misuse of national documents, while Switzerland recalled its ambassador briefly, citing procedural outrage. Yet none imposed sanctions. Germany, bound by its historic guilt and strategic cooperation with Israel, chose containment over confrontation. Within weeks, the investigation lost priority. Its files reclassified under national security. In Gaza, Hamas issued fiery statements, calling Bakhsi a martyr of scientific resistance. His funeral, broadcast from a hospital courtyard, drew thousands. Yet even there, unease lingered. Some officials wondered if his death would trigger deeper surveillance and retaliation. Others saw it as proof that innovation was the new battlefield, that laboratories had replaced trenches. In Washington, analysts quietly celebrated. One intelligence report noted, "Israel has neutralized a technological threat that could have altered drone warfare paradigms." The United Nations called for restraint, but stopped short of condemnation. The world moved on, its outrage dulled by routine. In the end, there were no expulsions, no sanctions, only silence and paperwork. For Mossad, it was a success measured not by applause, but by absence. No trace, no scandal, no retaliation. For Germany, it was another uneasy reminder that alliances often demand blindness. And for history, it was one more page in a book written entirely in invisible ink. Behind every assassination lies an institution, vast, silent, faceless. The phantom bureaucracy operates not from ideology, but from procedure, a machinery of signatures, authorizations, and invisible budgets. Within its corridors, Moral hesitation is replaced by workflow. Targets are not people. They are entries on encrypted databases, assigned priorities and expiration dates. In Tel Aviv's intelligence compound, rooms without windows hum with recycled air. Analysts sit before walls of flickering data, cross-referencing lives against risk metrics. Every keystroke contributes to the orchestration of death, disguised as defense. There is no emotion, only precision. The bureaucracy does not kill out of malice. It kills because it is built to. Across the ocean, parallel offices exist. Washington, London, Ankara, each with committees approving eliminations in the name of stability. Bureaucrats compose memos that sound clinical, yet decide destinies. Mitigate emerging threat. Neutralize non-state actor. Each phrase is a veil of legality over moral void. This world has no uniforms, only identification badges and biometric locks. It functions in daylight, yet remains unseen. Its power is sustained not by secrecy, but by normalization. The quiet acceptance that some truths must never reach daylight. And within that acceptance, history's most invisible empire thrives, unchallenged, unquestioned, unstoppable. They move without flags, without anthems, without borders. The invisible legions, fragments of states, trained in the art of erasure, exist only where deniability thrives. Each unit is myth and function combined. Caesarea's Cadanum, Unit 8200's Phantoms, MI6 Ghosts, CIA's ground assets. Their missions leave no witnesses, only patterns. Coincidences too perfect to be random. In dossiers, they are codenames and skill sets. One specializes in poisons that mimic disease, another in digital intrusion so seamless it erases itself. They are neither heroes nor villains, only extensions of calculation. Each believes in precision as faith, efficiency as virtue. When they strike, time itself becomes pliable, hours compressed into seconds, identities dissolved upon contact. Their reward is not glory, but silence. To the world, they never existed. To their handlers, they were always expendable. And yet within intelligence circles, their legends persist. The assassin who vanished in Prague, the courier who drowned in Vienna's canal, the train that carried a man to nowhere. Their shadows overlap across decades, forming a lineage of ghosts tasked with keeping nations invisible while making death unmistakably real. Long before Qasim Bakhsi's final journey, there were other ghosts. Operations that unfolded in whispers, vanishing from headlines before truth could take root. In 1973, in Lillehammer, Norway, Mossad agents mistook a Moroccan waiter for a Palestinian militant and shot him in the street. Diplomatic outrage followed, but accountability evaporated. The lesson learned: precision must never falter, and when it does, bureaucracy will cleanse the record. In 1997, in Amman, an operative disguised as a tourist attempted to poison Hamas leader Khaled Mashal with a nerve compound hidden in a pen. The mission failed, the agent captured, Israel forced into public humiliation. Yet years later, the same technique, microdose neuroinhibitors, resurfaced with perfect refinement. In Dubai, 2010, another man died in a luxury hotel room. His killers moved through elevators and corridors with identical poise. False passports, erased cameras, rehearsed efficiency. That case too dissolved into silence, its details locked away beneath the weight of mutual diplomacy. Each operation left behind the same residue, fragments of method, echoes of choreography, proof of a doctrine refined through repetition. Bakhsi's death on a moving train was not innovation, it was evolution. The mission was new only in geography. The playbook had been written decades before, its last line reading simply, "Nothing exists until it succeeds." Above the field operatives and analysts sit the architects, the unseen gods of statecraft. They speak in committees, signing orders that extinguish lives with the weight of a pen. Their language is sterile: proportionality, deterrence, containment. Yet behind those words lies the quiet arrogance of control. They believe themselves custodians of order, shaping chaos through invisible war. But in their pursuit of security, they create perpetual motion, a cycle of killing that feeds itself. And when the last target falls, they will draft another, unaware that the machinery they command no longer serves nations, only itself. When Qasim Bakhsi's body returned to Gaza 2 weeks later, it arrived sealed in a plain zinc coffin escorted by 2 silent relatives. No autopsy report accompanied it, only a death certificate stamped cardiac arrest. The funeral took place at dusk in Khan Yunis, under a pale orange sky heavy with dust. Thousands gathered, though few had ever met him. The chants were restrained, the grief subdued, as if everyone understood that even mourning him carried risk. Hamas officials eulogized him as the engineer of the skies, while his mother wept quietly beside the grave, clutching a notebook filled with his childhood sketches of kites. Above the crowd, homemade drones hovered, releasing white smoke in silent tribute. For a moment they formed the shape of a bird, his old code name, before scattering into the wind. International media gave the event a brief headline, then moved on. Yet in intelligence circles the funeral was monitored from space. Analysts noted the attendance of unfamiliar figures, new faces stepping into a void left by his death. Even as the ground settled over his coffin, recruitment had begun. The mind was gone, but the blueprints remained. In the years that followed, Bakhsi's absence reshaped the balance of clandestine warfare. Within Gaza, a silent race began to replicate his systems. Engineers who once studied under him worked in fragments, reconstructing algorithms from memory. None achieved his precision, but their efforts multiplied, decentralizing the technology he had once guarded alone. Innovation became insurgency. Israel's security doctrine adjusted accordingly. Mossad expanded its European networks, embedding deeper into trade, academia, and cyber infrastructure. The precedent of the train assassination normalized extraterritorial elimination. Other nations took note. Russia, Turkey, and Iran quietly adopted similar models, citing preventive security as justification. In diplomatic corridors, Germany reinforced surveillance partnerships with Israel while tightening public secrecy laws, ensuring that future operations could unfold without exposure. The European Union issued muted calls for transparency, knowing none would follow. In Gaza, his legend hardened into mythology. Murals appeared on walls, a figure with mechanical wings, eyes fixed on the sky. His name became a password whispered in code by those continuing his work. Yet, beneath the reverence, fear persisted. Everyone understood what his death had proved. Intelligence may kill the man, but never the method. The blueprint, once released, cannot die. In the end, Qasim Bakhsi's death changed little in the grand machinery of geopolitics. Borders remained contested, drones still circled the skies, and nations continued to kill in silence while speaking of peace. Yet his story revealed a hidden symmetry, that intelligence and terror, invention and annihilation, often share the same tools and minds. On that German train, a man of equations met a system of execution, both flawless in design. His passing was not an ending, but a mirror, reflecting a world where progress and death travel on the same rail, bound for the same destination.